Today, he is thought of mainly as the jolly man in red who brings toys to good girls and boys on Christmas Eve, but his story stretches all the way back to the 3rd century, when Saint Nicholas walked the earth and became the patron saint of children. Find out more about the history of Santa Claus from his earliest origins to the shopping mall Santas of today, and discover how two New Yorkers, Clement Clarke Moore and Thomas Nast, were major influences on the Santa Claus millions of children wait for each Christmas. The name Santa Claus evolved from Saint Nicholas's Dutch nickname, Sinterklaas, a shortened form of Sint Nicolaas, Dutch for Saint Nicholas. Here, a man dressed as Sinterklaas greets children in a parade in Amsterdam. The legend of Saint Nicholas, the real Santa Claus. The legend of Santa Claus can be traced back hundreds of years to a monk named St. Nicholas. It is believed that Nicholas was born sometime around AD 280 in Patara, near Myra in modern-day Turkey. Much admired for his piety and kindness, Saint Nicholas became the subject of many legends. It is said that he gave away all of his inherited wealth and traveled the countryside helping the poor and sick. One of the best-known Saint Nicholas stories is the time he saved 3 poor sisters from being sold into slavery or prostitution by their father by providing them with a dowry so that they could be married. Over the course of many years, Nicholas's popularity spread and he became known as the protector of children and sailors. His feast day is celebrated on the anniversary of his death, December 6th. This was traditionally considered a lucky day to make large purchases or to get married. By the Renaissance, Saint Nicholas was the most popular saint in Europe. Even after the Protestant Reformation, when the veneration of saints began to be discouraged, Saint Nicholas maintained a positive reputation. Sinterklaas comes to New York Street. Nicholas made his first inroads into American popular culture towards the end of the 18th century. In December 1773, and again in 1774, a New York newspaper reported that groups of Dutch families had gathered to honor the anniversary of his death. The name Santa Claus evolved from Nick's Dutch nickname, Sinterklaas, a shortened form of Sint Nicolaas, Dutch for Saint Nicholas. In 1804, John Pintard, a member of the New York Historical Society, distributed woodcuts of Saint Nicholas at the Society's annual meeting. The background of the engraving contains now familiar Santa images including stockings filled with toys and fruit hung over a fireplace. In 1809, Washington Irving helped to popularize the Sinterklaas stories when he referred to Saint Nicholas as the patron saint of New York in his book, The History of New York. As his prominence grew, Sinterklaas was described as everything from a rascal with a blue 3-cornered hat, red waistcoat, and yellow stockings to a man wearing a broad-brimmed hat and a huge pair of Flemish trunk hose. Shopping mall Santas. Gift-giving, mainly centered around children, has been an important part of the Christmas celebrations since the holiday's rejuvenation in the early 19th century. Stores began to advertise Christmas shopping in 1820, and by the 1840s, newspapers were creating separate sections for holiday advertisements, which often featured images of the newly popular Santa Claus. In 1841, thousands of children visited a Philadelphia shop to see a life-size Santa Claus model. It was only a matter of time before stores began to attract children and their parents, with the lure of a peek at a live Santa Claus. In the early 1890s, the Salvation Army needed money to pay for the free Christmas meals they provided to needy families. They began dressing up unemployed men in Santa Claus suits and sending them into the streets of New York to solicit donations. Those familiar Salvation Army Santas have been ringing bells on the street corners of American cities ever since. Perhaps the most iconic department store Santa is Kris Kringle in the 1947 classic Santa Claus movie, Miracle on 34th Street. A young Natalie Wood played a little girl who believes Kris Kringle, played by Edmund Gwenn, who won an Oscar for the role, when he says he is the real Santa Claus. Miracle on 34th Street was remade in 1994 and starred Lord Richard Attenborough and Mara Wilson. The Macy's Santa has appeared at almost every Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade since it began in 1924. And fans of all ages still line up to meet the Macy's Santa in New York City and at stores around the country, where children can take pictures on Santa's lap and tell him what they want for Christmas. 8 Hanukkah traditions and their origins. 'Twas the night before Christmas in 1822, Clement Clarke Moore, an Episcopal minister, wrote a long Christmas poem for his 3 daughters entitled, An Account of a Visit from St. Nicholas, more popularly known as, 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. Moore's poem, which he was initially hesitant to publish due to the frivolous nature of its subject, is largely responsible for our modern image of Santa Claus as a right jolly old elf, with a portly figure and the supernatural ability to ascend a chimney with a mere nod of his head. Although some of Moore's imagery was probably borrowed from other sources, his poem helped popularize the now familiar image of a Santa Claus who flew from house to house on Christmas Eve in a miniature sleigh, led by 8 flying reindeer to leave presents for deserving children. An account of a visit from St. Nicholas created a new and immediately popular American icon.